Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. This is the Captain's Quarters show. I am your host, L. Milliner, the captain. I have a great show planned for you all tonight. I have a special guest that will be joining me shortly. We're going to be talking about the local election here in Montgomery, Alabama, the mayor's race. We have incumbent Stephen Reed, who's running for re-election. We have his challengers, Marcus McNeil, Victorious Felder, and Barry Gilbreth. Now, we're going to be breaking down the candidates and discussing who has the best shot of defeating Stephen Reed. And we'll also be discussing some specifics of some things that have happened here in Montgomery, Alabama that may impact who gets elected. And it's going to be a good show. Good show. I want y'all to come on in. If y'all have any comments, any questions, leave them in the comment section. Whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, I will be able to see it and I will be able to respond to it. We got a good a decent election going on. It's a decent election. It's gonna be a tight race, really tight. You know, back in 2019, we had 11 candidates. 11 were in that run for mayor back in 2019, and this time we only have 4. So last time it ended up in a runoff. It was a runoff between Stephen Reed and David Woods, and you know, personally, I knew then I didn't want Stephen Reed to be the mayor, so of course I went with David Woods. But to me, he just wasn't the best candidate to put up against Stephen Reed, and he just didn't run a good campaign, to be honest. Therefore, they ended up going to the runoff, and Stephen Reed blew David Woods out of the water. I believe Stephen Reed got like 34,000 votes in that runoff, whereas David Woods got around 18, 19, maybe 20,000 votes in that runoff. So it was not close. And, you know, this time around, it's a little bit different because of the number of candidates. That makes a huge difference. Last time, like I said, you had 11 candidates altogether. This time you have 4. Out of those 4, you only really have 2 candidates that are running against each other. I mean, you know, Victorious Felder, in my opinion, I'll talk about that more specifically later, but he's not going to be in the running for the top 2 candidates. I don't see that happening. It's going to be a Gilbreth, Stephen Reed run. And between those 2, I think it's going to be a very slim margin. But I'll talk about more about who I think is going to edge out. Maybe you want to hear it, maybe you don't. Who knows? You will find out. And then also I will be talking. I do have videos to show, so I will be bringing up a video where our mayor was on a national media program discussing the whole riverboat fiasco, the whole riverboat brawl that happened a couple of Saturdays ago that made international news. And I will be playing that, and we'll be responding to what he said in that audio, in that video, because he did a live broadcast on a national platform, as well as I also have a commercial that's going to kind of explain some things that's been going on here in Montgomery, Alabama. So, you know, got a great show planned, and without further ado, I'm about to bring in my guest who will be joining me. What's up, my brother?
Hey, sir. How you doing?
Doing well. How you?
So far, so good.
I heard that. So if you will, go ahead, introduce yourself to the people that don't know you, and reintroduce yourself to the ones who already are familiar with you.
All right. My name is Cedric Coley. I'm from Montgomery County. A couple of years ago, I ran for the city council for District 4. And it was very exciting. It was very exciting. It was back then when Todd Strange was mayor, and a lot of things that people such as myself and other individuals who are trying to sound the alarm about what's going wrong with the city, but also what could be going well with the city. We were talking about these things back then, and that was almost 10 years ago. So since then, I've partaken up becoming a new and beginning farmer, as well as plugging into the local Republican Party. And now I'm a part of the state party. And that has always been exciting to try to help steer the ship of a state party. And it's just been good not running for a public office, but meeting people across the board, talking about solutions, and talking about the right direction we need to move in.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. So you say you've been at this for like 10 years as far as being directly involved in politics.
At least 10 years. I actually attempted to run for the state legislature in 2010. I was too young by 1 year. And at that time, I was going to run as an independent. A couple of years later, in 2014, I was able to qualify on the ballot as the Alabama Independence Party. Myself, an individual from Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, got together and said, hey, listen, we don't want to be beholden to a political party. Most Alabamians and Americans are moderates and independents. So let's have a third option on the ballot. So we gathered the signatures, and we qualified on the ballot as an Independence Party candidate. And my platform was simple: do the will of the people. So at that time, it was District 69. There was a Democrat running, there was a Republican running, and there was myself as the independent running. That election year of 2014, it was a midterm election. People went in and they voted straight ticket across the board. But the beauty of it is you still had over 400 individuals across that district who walked in and voted straight ticket independent. Other individuals attempted to vote for me. You can't. You have to vote for Democrat or Republican. There's no split ticket voting.
Yep.
And if people go look up the Montgomery Advertiser article about it, there were people that were disenfranchised. I had family members who went in and attempted to vote for me, and the poll worker told them, no, you can't vote for the independent candidate. You have to vote Democrat and Republican. We took it to the probate judge, who was Stephen Reed at the time.
Yep.
What he told us was, yes, this did happen, but the numbers were so insignificant, it would not have affected the overall outcome. So, but I was always raised one person, one vote. If one person is disenfranchised, then the entire system is at jeopardy. That was the entire fight about 2020 on the side of the Democrats and the side of the Republicans. Disenfranchisement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that people sometimes they confused when we say that there was like some fraudulent activity and you got ballot harvesting. You have different levels of what we would call fraud. So you have people who maybe they're people who are deceased and somehow they end up making 5 votes, and then but you take hundreds of people who are deceased and you add up 5 times however many of those people are. That you're talking about hundreds, thousands of votes that you can get that way, plus ballot harvesting, plus people who go and vote multiple times at the poll. There's so many different ways, and then also people like yourself where they're saying, well, you can't vote independent, or you can't vote such and such because we don't allow it to be that way. So now you're taking away hundreds of more votes. So there's different methods to getting to the same results, and that is just overall fraud and overall, like you said, disenfranchisement, where people are not. It's not a fair election all the way through. How it should be, it should be, to me, basically going to the poll, if you don't go to the poll, it needs to be something where you're doing absentee ballots. Like you're military and you're in another state, and you have to do absentee balloting, or maybe you have a some type of disability where you can't get to the poll. That's something different. But otherwise, I don't see a lot of leeway for that. So to me, go to the poll, have your ID, show your ID, prove who you are. So you go, like you said, one time, one person, one vote. And it's very simple. And to me, it's not complicated. We saw in Georgia, they implemented more restrictions and rules on voting, and they had an increase in voters the last, I think, 2022. So there's just all around. I think, to me, overall, I think Alabama has done a pretty decent job. And I think they last election, I think they got they were like the best run election in the country, if I remember correctly, under John Merrill. Are you familiar with that? Did you hear that?
There's a couple of things that can happen with the voting system that we all should be well educated across the board. For example, the more educated a voter is, the better. The more trained a poll worker and a poll watchers are very important. The more trained they are, the better. And by training, I mean what the actual law is. Not, oh, this makes me uncomfortable, don't do it. No, what is the actual law? So the more information that's out there, the more transparency the system is, the better it will be across the board. And quite frankly, my grandfather was a Vietnam veteran. He was not drafted, he volunteered. So in my bloodline, we have farmers and volunteers who have in uniform. And the thing about that is, we cannot say that we're the leaders of the free world when we cannot reinstill integrity and honesty and trust in our election system. It makes no sense to be across the world enforcing democracy when we get it wrong here on a regular basis. And by wrong, I mean irregularities, electoral mishaps, disinformation, and it could be local politics. All of that contributes to an election system that is very sacred to our republic.
Yep. And oftentimes, like you just said, our republic, oftentimes people view America as being a democracy and not a constitutional republic. Like, it's interesting.
The danger of that is the safety of having a republic, a constitutional republic. The minority is protected. And the smallest minority, Chairman John Wall, our Republican state chairman, constantly reminds us that the smallest minority is the individual. So in a system of a constitutional republic, it doesn't matter if you're one versus everyone else. You are still supposed to have the same equal protection under the law. In a pure democracy, in a direct democracy, you don't have that. You go along with what the mob tells you to do, and if you step out of line, you're going to be canceled. And there's consequences and repercussions for going against the mob. And human experiences that we've learned from in this American experiment has taught us the best form of governance for us is first and foremost personal accountability and responsibility. But the next best thing is a constitutional republic that restrains state, local, and federal governance and tries to empower the individual with as many economic and social civil liberties as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, with all that said, let's get into the Montgomery mayor race. and go through and talk about each candidate and get to, and I'm gonna bring in some graphics for us to look at as well. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and bring in. For everybody that's not aware, if you are in Montgomery, Alabama, this Tuesday we have an election, mayor's race as well as city council, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. this Tuesday, August 22nd. And I have a graphic I want to put up for you guys, some numbers that you guys can call if you have any issues. There you go. This is from the Montgomery County Probate Court. You see the numbers. They got the website, montgomeryvotesal.gov. So call the numbers if you have any issues. But I wanted to put that up there. And then I want to discuss, number one, who do you personally see as the weakest link in this race?
When you're talking about running for a public office such as a mayor of a city, an important city such as the state capital, there's a lot of factors that go into the tier candidate. And that basically means who's at the top, who are the front runners, and who doesn't have the resources or the finances. I believe in this race, it's very clear the two front runners are Mayor Stephen Reed and Barrett Gilbreth. They have the most money. They have the most resources behind them. They have the most political muscle behind them. The second tier are the other two candidates, Felder and McNeil. And I put them in the second tier solely because of the resources. Because honestly, quite frankly, if you talk to these two gentlemen, Felder and McNeil, Felder knows exactly what he wants to do to tackle the problems that plague us pertaining to crime. He states, so eloquently, he has over 15 years of law enforcement experience. That's hard to argue with when the other three candidates don't have law enforcement experience. So this is a gentleman who's a young black male who has over 15 years of law enforcement experience, and he is bluntly saying, we can't in earnest talk about economic growth. We can't in earnest talk about fixing our education system. We can't in earnest talk about growing the city of Montgomery without tackling the problems that are plaguing our communities right now, and that's crime. Crime is on the rise. Now, I know our illustrious mayor constantly propagates that crime is down. I would challenge, what specific crime rate are you talking about? Because if you're talking about murder, for example, if last year we had 100 murders, and that would be the record, and we're one less than that right now, then yes, technically crime is down, but my gosh, we're still high in murder. If you're talking about car theft, aggravated assault, burglary, racing, crime is up. I had a relative a year and a half ago that was murdered. So when I attempted to present this to the mayor over the radio, he continued with his talking points. Hey, let me shout you down and tell you what I want you to know because you're wrong and I'm right. And because I'm saying this as the mayor, you should believe me, as if this not propaganda.
Right.
So Felder has made that point very clear. If crime, in his words, if crime is your issue, I'm your man. Now, on the flip side, when you're talking about Main Street economics, McNeil is your guy. McNeil is a self-made entrepreneur, young black male. He's out there every day grinding, doing it. And his economic platform makes sense. He's talking about how to anchor the youth here, not only with services and more activities, but with economic growth. How do we attract technology here? How do we keep our homegrown businesses here? And how do we utilize the universities and the incubators and the Chamber of Commerce that we already have here? Now, keep in mind, these two individuals have detailed platforms on crime and on Main Street economics. But again, in politics, if you're running for public office, you're battling certain forces. And if you don't have the finances and the resources behind you, they will put you in a box and act like you don't exist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's been my main thing I've been trying to tell people for the last, few weeks. I've been telling people that very thing. You can be a candidate that has the best of intentions. You can have the greatest of platforms. You can have, plans of ready to go plans that if you implement these plans, we will see a better Montgomery. But when it comes to politics, the greatest of plans, the greatest of perspective does not matter. What matters is your face value. When people see your name or see your face, does it resonate with them? Do they know you? Money, resources, connections, like all of that is going to give you the edge. And we see that with Stephen Reed. The man is the son to Joel Reed, right? And it's a lot of dark background when it comes to that, but he comes from that type of family. So he's got a family. He's a married man. Has children. So the image that he portrays, coupled with he's been in politics already. He was a probate judge, as you mentioned earlier. When you had your issue, he was a probate judge. He was a probate judge for, I want to say, like 15 years or so, like a long time. So he already had that background. And then when he ran his first time, he was running as, hey, I'm going to be the first black mayor Montgomery has ever had. So you got this man that's already got all of these positives on his side, and he's telling you to a city that's majority black, I can be your first black mayor. It was just like it made the most sense for people to, in their mind, put him in that seat. And like you said, but when it comes to the best of plans, he didn't have that, but he had everything else that you need. And so let me read this comment. Post this comment up here. It's a lot. Let's see here. I agree 100%. Gilbert has the support and funds from people in our city with wealth and political influence, but inadequate experience. Reed has experience, support, and funds from people in our city with wealth and political influence. His popularity has decreased a bit, but he is still preferred. Felder has a strong campaign for crime in the city, extensive experience in law enforcement, but does not have strong financial or political support. I know nothing about the other candidate. Then it ends. So I think people kind of they understand who's who in this race. And so before we get to, so we kind of laid out, we said, okay, look, Marcus McNeil, great economic plans, great plans for the youth, for development at the ground level for this city. When you have Felder, a man who's got law enforcement experience, he would be great to combat the crime in the city, which would overall help the city economically and in any other way, because people would just feel safer going outside, going out to the movies, I mean, people are afraid to go places in the daytime. It doesn't even matter what part of town they're in. So, and let me add this. He wants to say one more thing. He added this to his comment. If I had to project, there will be a runoff between Gilbert and Reed for sure. I feel that Felder needs to get more political experience and support before this will become a reality for him. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, go ahead.
Just chiming in on that, we have to understand that Felder and McNeil, because the local Democratic machine does puppets. They don't see them as puppets. They don't see them as, if we give them marching orders, they're going to follow through in lockstep. So a lot of the resources and the political experience and the financing is withheld from them on purpose. And it's not a ding on them as a candidate, because they have qualified to be a candidate on the ballot. They make sense. I feel good that if elected, McNeil has Main Street economics. And if elected, Felder has crime in his crosshairs. I feel good that those two would do those trades. Now, when you're talking about Reed and Gilbreth, with Reed, you're talking about a political machine. A father who has been a part of a state political party and political machine for many decades. His brother runs the county's Democratic Party. So, and he served 2 terms as probate judge. Before that, he went to a HBCU. That comes with clout. That comes with resources. So it's hard to fight against these things unless you're a part of these things. With that being said, there's a lot of people who don't support Reed, but they're being quiet. They're going to stay silent until he is no longer the mayor of Montgomery. And that in and of itself should speak volumes. It's not a referendum on the other candidates, but it should be a glaring contrast of what type of country do we want to have as opposed to what type of country we have. And the side effects of those are the symptoms we're dealing with, whether it's low economics, a lower standard of living, crime plaguing our communities, or we're just not cutting it as a city. Montgomery does have some work to do. I challenge everyone listening to this to do research on all 4 candidates. It's our responsibility and our accountability to keep this republic. And it is very hard for these people to continue to trick us and swindle us and push their corruption across the board if we are a well-informed electorate. So that's first and foremost what we're attempting to do with this show, push out information and get people to think differently than they would normally think. For example, well, Reed's a black man. I know him. Gilbreth is a white man. I know him or I don't know him. I'm going to vote for Reed or I'm going to vote for Gilbreth because of that. That's the low-hanging fruit. We're better than that. Our ancestors fought hard as hell to get us to this point. Let's honor them by getting educated if we haven't already. But let's also honor them by making sure we vote our values and our conscience this Tuesday. Regardless of who your candidate is, show up, make your voice heard. Because if it's a close vote, then neither candidate's going to have a mandate. But if it is a resounding vote, then the world will know what direction the city of Montgomery wants to go.
Absolutely. And with that said, let me pull in this commercial that I have, and I have another to play as well. But let me play this first.
Montgomery streets and neighborhoods used to be clean and well groomed, something we could be proud of. Now, look at what has happened to our city. Trash sits for weeks. How can we take pride in our city when this is what we see every day? You pay your garbage fees and taxes. You deserve a mayor who cares about your city. Barry Gilbreth will make sure the sanitation department has the staff and resources they need to do their job. If you want a cleaner Montgomery that you can be proud of, vote for Barry.
All right. So when you see something like that where a candidate has video of the trash on the side of the road where it has been picked up for days, weeks, who knows, maybe a month or so. And do you look at that as something that is, can that be something that Reed can just say, look, that's just part of maybe weather patterns. That could be part of, other things that happen that caused this to happen. Or is that something that people are going to see and say, you know what? Yeah, that happens in my neighborhood too. I see trash building up in my neighborhood. That's something I don't want a mayor that does not clean up my trash. Like, what do you think about that type of ad? Does that help Gilbert?
Seeing that ad, it plays to a particular group because the housing locations in that ad doesn't necessarily represent all of Montgomery. A lot of places in Montgomery have been dealing with trash and buildup and blighted homes and dilapidated structures for many decades. I would have hoped, and my biggest thing with Gilbert's campaign is, first and foremost, announcing less than 2 months before an actual election day that cripples and handicaps your campaign. And that's whiplash for the voters themselves. And for your campaign, you have to consider the fact that you, as a white, wealthy male, the Reeds have already branded you as a Trump supporter. You cannot break that mold in less than 2 months. There's legwork that you had to have put in order to have broken that mold. So there's things about Gilbreth that we don't know. There's things that Gilbreth could have communicated to us in a better tone, in a more holistic approach to Montgomery as a whole, that is not going to be able to take place before this election day on Tuesday. Time constraints. The other thing is, I quite frankly see Gilbert's campaign as more so geared towards Prattville, Alabama, as opposed to Montgomery, Alabama. If you go to his social media platforms, buddy, if you have not won that vote already, then you've already got problems. There are people, there are groups, there are neighborhoods, there are voters in this city that you need precious face-to-face time with. And you can't get that in less than 2 months before an election day. So that handicapped Gilbert's campaign even from the start. And I know the context behind it. A lot of individuals in the faith community were seeking a warrior that would step up and say, "Here I am, send me." And there were a couple of candidates that were vetting themselves, asking their families and praying. And they decided that, no, this is not my journey right now in life. And I understand that Gilbreth and his family stepped forward and said, "Hey, listen, I'm willing to fight the fight." But again, in politics, there's certain things that have to be in place for the betterment of the voters. We're not talking about political tricks here. We're talking about, do you as a candidate have the resources to get your message out? Do you have enough financial backing that you're not straining your loved ones? And your message itself, is it clear, concise? Do you know what you're talking about? And quite frankly, honestly, do you know your audience? Do you know who you're campaigning for, on behalf of, and asking them for their vote? All of that plays in politics. If you're serious about this, if you're doing this in earnest. And again, I'm not saying any of these candidates haven't, but there's one candidate in particular that we're going to talk about a little bit later. He's made it very clear that he's diabolical. And that's an issue to me. He's made it very clear that he doesn't need the black vote because he's already got it figured out.
Yep.
So there was a lot of opportunities there to announce last year that you were going to run for mayor. And there would have been a lot of people listening, willing, and giving you the opportunity to speak. But in less than 2 months before the election, people have already made up their minds who they would vote for, or they wouldn't vote, or they would not vote, or they would just be silent and wouldn't vote for any particular candidate. So that's my biggest thing with the Gilbert campaign. The other issue I have with him is, even though he's a very wealthy individual, he didn't really talk in specifics about Main Street economics. He spoke about bringing industry here, but I don't remember him in the forums discussing in detail, like some of the other candidates, about incentives, about Main Street economics, how we would help empower Montgomery businesses that are already here. And there are things going on in North Montgomery and South Montgomery and West Montgomery that was never discussed.
That's right. I have another comment. He's agreeing with you. He said Gilbert was plugged into this election by people in high places. He has been gone from the city for a while and fairly recently moved back. There's an agenda being pushed behind the scenes for sure. I agree with Mr. Coley. He is spot on. I wouldn't be surprised if it is revealed that members of the mob are behind Gilbert. Nice how they plugged in a black man to narrate that commercial for Bear Gilbert. That will entice the low-hanging fruits as well.
And let me just add this, because I know that this has been a reoccurring theme towards the end of this election, that Gilbert is a Trump supporter. He's a part of the Republican Party, and the Republican Party is backing him. I am a member of the Alabama Republican Party.
Speak on it.
I'm a member of the local Republican Party here of Montgomery County. Gilbert is not an active member of the Republican Party, and we have not written him any checks. There has been no marching orders coming out by any chairpersons directing us to support by any means necessary the Gilbert campaign. He's just simply a very wealthy individual who has bought up consultants, and that's the extent of that. And I want to throw this caveat out there. Every single candidate running for mayor of Montgomery in this election on Tuesday is not a Republican. They're either a moderate or they're liberal. I've seen their voting records. I've seen what primaries they voted in, and you don't have a Trump staunch, America first individual running for public office for mayor of Montgomery.
Folks, I'm not running. So nobody, no one is a Trump supporter. No one is even on that. No one's even on the Republican side. So
yeah. So if we want Republican Party, the Republican Party is fielding a candidate to run for mayor of Montgomery. That's simply not true. It's a nonpartisan race. But what is happening is the Democratic Party is very active, to the point where they have produced that yellow ballot again, dictating to the black voters, Democratic voters, who you better and better not vote for.
that's a fact. It's so, when it comes to Montgomery, and I've had this discussion where I try to tell people that I understand that Montgomery's mayor race is a nonpartisan race, but that does not mean that neither party or any other party or special interest can get involved in the race. So, saying that to say, we all know Mayor Reed is heavily Democratic. He makes sure that he partners with other Democratic members nationally, state level, everything. So it's funny how when it comes to the Gilbreth side, he's being called GOP funded, Trump supporting, no evidence. But then you got Reed on the other side, who gets Democratic cosigns, funding. He goes and does different events on that side, and it's like as if no one even notices that. That's always interesting to me. But then when I bring it up, they tell me, "Oh, Montgomery's a nonpartisan. Mayor's nonpartisan, so it's okay for him to go over here and get Democratic money." But the other side, he claims that guy's getting that money. He's not even getting the money. It's just
Right.
it's like that Jedi mind trick. Don't look at me
Yeah,
doing anything. Look at him.
Yeah, these are not the droids you're looking for, right? But
Man.
at the core root of all of this, the intent was to have the mayoral and the municipal elections nonpartisan. Because, buddy, if you're running for mayor of Montgomery or city council person of Montgomery, you need to be a representative of all the residents of your district and city. Regardless of their background, if they're a blue-purple people leader, you need to represent them. If they're an orange person from Mars, you need to represent them. And I get it. Individuals who are part of the Democratic and Republican parties, we pick our favorites. You know, we have our certain talking points that are already built in. But at the end of the day, let's get serious about the issues that are plaguing us. Are we going to pass these problems to our children and the next generation? Or are we going to solve these issues, move on to bigger and better? Because I guarantee you, united, we can never be defeated. These are problems that we can solve. And we can hand tomorrow a better future if we will get serious about this. Just think about all the things that we have been able to accomplish throughout the decades, and it did not take all of us to do so. If we're serious about a one Montgomery, we can be a one Montgomery. If you are serious about running for mayor or city council, then be that representative. Know your duties of office. Hold yourself accountable and present solutions. Never be a part of the problem. And we as voters, we have a responsibility to get educated on all the candidates running to represent us. It's not good enough for us to simply say, well, I don't know that person. I kind of like this person. I'm just going to close my eyes and vote for somebody. Take it more serious, because these individuals that we're voting for this Tuesday, these individuals will impact your life more powerful, more importantly, than Washington, D.C. can ever, or the state legislature. We should have learned that when we went through COVID. These individuals are the ones that impact our day-to-day duties. And it's very serious.
That's right. Let me pull in this poll right here. So this article is from the Alabama Political Reporter. And according to them, now this was as recent as August the 2nd of this year. It says they polled, this is from Impact Research. They polled 500 likely voters in Montgomery. And according to them, Reed has a 24-point advantage over his closest competitor. And it says that he can win without a runoff. So, I mean, now I'm not familiar with the Alabama Political Reporter. I'm assuming that they are going to claim to be a nonpartisan group, but I'm looking down here and I see the name of Josh Moon.
Yeah.
Josh Moon is anything but nonpartisan. So
yeah, they have a collection of reporters that write articles. Some of them are hit pieces. Some of them are actual research. A lot of it is their opinions. But I did see a poll that state that Stephen Reed right now is hovering somewhere around 57%. Gilbreth is hovering around 41%. And the other two candidates, Felder and McNeil, are hovering around 2% together. Now, regardless of what we talked about, money, resources, polls, opinions, pundits, the voters can always throw all of this out the window. They can always go in and say, you know what? We're going to vote for Felder or McNeil. We're going to do what we want to do as opposed to what we're being told to do, the status quo, and we're going to vote for one of those two. So all of this does not matter until the votes are counted on election day. So by no means are we saying Stephen Reed is a walk-in. By no means are we saying you're throwing your vote away if you go with Gilbreth. By no means are we saying you should not consider Felder and McNeil. You should consider all four of them. What's best for your future? Who has your best interests at heart? And vote for that person. But as for me and my house, I know I'm not riding with Stephen Reed. I'm not even voting with Stephen Reed.
Me either. Me either. Let me bring in this video right here. I want the folks to listen to this.
Thinks nobody is paying attention? What does Stephen Reed really think of Montgomery when he thinks nobody is paying attention?
I will always get 38 to 45% of the white vote. If I get 30 to 45% of the white vote, I don't have to get the black vote like I just passed, you know.
No mayor should ever take our community for granted. Montgomery can do better.
Run that back.
38 to 45% of the white vote. If I get 30 to 45% of the white vote, I don't have to get.
He said he needs to get 38 to 45% of the white vote. As long as he gets that percentage, I don't give a F he don't have to get the black vote. I got this past election. So basically, last time he was good. He won it easily. Like I said earlier, I believe he got in the runoff 35,000 votes, whereas David Woods got like 19,000 votes. So it wasn't even close. He's saying right here, listen, I'm not worried about the black vote. All I got to do is go out there, talk about how I'm a frat guy. I went to HBCU, shake some hands, smile. Everybody knows me. And they're going to go vote for me. The black people are in the bag. As long as I get those white votes, 38 to 45%, it's a done deal. Now, will people remember this right here? Would this be remembered at the polls? What do you think?
I would hope so. As soon as you get out of the bubble of Montgomery, people have had these conversations. The further away from Montgomery, Alabama you get, people see Stephen Reed for simply that, an opportunist riding on the black vote, and also a very prideful individual. This is an individual who called himself a diabolical scientist. I would never support any individual product that self-describe themselves as a diabolical anything.
That's right.
That should be considered. But also the arrogance, the vitriol, and the venom of saying, I don't need the GD black vote. I can go over here and get a section of this white vote, and I'm good. I don't need y'all. I can just sit on my assets, and I'll be fine. I ain't got to do nothing. I'm good. Y'all ain't good, but I'm good. Y'all can have all black everything. But if you don't do X, Y, and Z, you ain't going to have nothing. That is something that every voter should consider Tuesday. That is something that every voter for the rest of their life should consider for every candidate. Who are these individuals that you are considering for public office, whether it's the President of the United States or the local county clerk? Who are these individuals? What do they really think about your vote? And an individual, from my perspective, Stephen Reed would not be in the position he's in if it wasn't for the legacy and the hardships that it took to get the black vote. To turn around in any setting, any conversation, and demean and degrade the black vote, how dare you spit on our ancestors, this republic, and every future black or white or any other American voter. One person, one vote. That is why this republic is so great. That's why this American experiment continues to exist. That's why people enlist and sign up to fight and lose their lives for this republic, because of the love and the sacredness of one person, one vote, liberty, and civil liberties for all. And for any public individual, whether you're in office or seeking office, and you want to degrade the American vote, the black voter, any other vote, how dare you? How dare you play our ignorance and act as if we will not remember? Now, you may be able to use the Democratic machine to have the Democratic voters, because predominantly in the city of Montgomery, it's a Democratic stronghold. But for you to use that to continue to ride on the support of Democratic voters and say, I don't need y'all, I can get in there anyway, but you know what? You're going to vote for me anyway. That's a slap in the face of every voter now in Montgomery. So I would hope the voters consider that, whether you're a supporter of Stephen Reed or not. This was not doctorate. Nobody altered his audio. He said it in anger, and he never apologized for saying it. He was only upset it became public. That's the part that he doesn't want you to know, how he actually feels about you when you go against what he wants to do. This was a group of activists who came together, petitioned their mayor for certain grievances, and he lashed out at them like he has always lashed out at certain individual groups. For example, when he was at the city council and the city council did not vote the way he wanted them to, he said, you know what? This city's not about equality. And I'm actually going to tell voters and other I'm actually going to tell economic individuals and influencers, you need to take your business somewhere else. And if you want me to, I'll give you the cell number of the mayor of Birmingham. Is that the type of leadership that's going to take us into a better future? Is that the type of leadership that's going to be able to help us conquer these problems that plague our communities? No. There's too much hatred. There's too much division. There's too much venom there. And everybody should consider that. Again, whether you're a supporter of his or not. And I don't see how anybody can defend that, but I see how a lot of his supporters are attacking individuals who are bringing it up. These are his words. This is not deep fake AI altered. That's right. Read from the heart.
Absolutely, man. People, when a candidate tells you, when he tells you who he is, believe him. That was him in authentic form. That was him in a private meeting with people who are trying to push Montgomery forward in their own way, and they're trying to partner with him, and he's telling them to their face, and by telling them to their face, he's telling the whole Montgomery.
And there's a lawsuit before the courts about this between Charles Lee and Mayor Reed, and I'm very anxious to see the outcome of that case. There's also another case that the voters of Montgomery should consider this Tuesday when they go to cast their vote. It's a case against the mayor of Montgomery, Stephen Reed, the city of Montgomery, versus former Chief Finley. This is a federal case that he is saying there were false charges placed on him that could have been very detrimental to his life if he went to prison. Can you imagine what individuals would do to a former police chief in prison? So you're playing with people's lives now? Just because they don't go along or be in lockstep with what you want them to do? That's another case that hasn't been brought up in this campaign that should be considered when we're talking about the mayor of Montgomery. There are other things that should be considered. Within a matter of a couple of months, when Mayor Reed was elected, he demanded the governor's office appoint his wife as the new probate judge, and sneered and said, you know what? You shouldn't support or appoint J.C. Love or any of my former opponents to anything because it shouldn't be a consolation prize. Don't give them nothing. I defeated them. What's wrong with my wife? She's a lawyer. Appoint her. So this guy has a legacy of, if you don't want to do it the way I want you to do it, then there's something wrong with you.
Yep, he want to get you out the way.
And I don't need you.
And here is the suit. Former Montgomery police chief suing the city and mayor Stephen Reed. And this is from April of this year.
If you will, take some time and read some of that section out loud, and maybe this
Sure
will
will.
marinate.
So, Chief Finley's federal lawsuit claims they engaged in illegal employment practices and broke federal and state law. Finley was hired in 2015 when Ty Strange was mayor. He says that current mayor Stephen Reed and others forced him to resign in 2021 after making false complaints against him, including bullying, retaliation, race-based decision-making, and ethics violations. In his 8-count lawsuit, Finley says the city and mayor wanted him gone because he enforced civil rights laws and hired, promoted, and disciplined officers equally. So he's saying he treated his officers the same, fairly, but his boss, Mayor Reed, wanted him to not do that. Okay? He says that Reed wanted black officers promoted and given better conditions because of their race. Finley says he was forced to resign because he disciplined black officers and promoted a white police officer. He says he and the department's deputy chief of operations were cleared of all wrongdoing by the Attorney General's office. So, to me, that sounds pretty much in line with what Stephen Reed has been about since he ran his campaign originally in 2019. He has been a mayor. He's been a man, first of all, that pushes his race first and foremost. That is the low-hanging fruit that he uses out front. He puts that out front. So before you see his character as a man, before you see what he's really about, being a family man and whatever else, you have to know he's a black man. He wants to make sure you know that. Then he plays on those emotions when it comes to that. So he had a chief who was trying to be equal and fair within the department. Reed didn't want him to do that, according to what Chief Finley is saying in his lawsuit. He didn't want him to look past the black officers or discipline them and make them, I guess, look bad in the department while he's promoting a white officer. It didn't even say several or some. It said a white officer. So it was one officer that got promoted, and it's like all hell breaking loose. This is what this man does. That's the politics that he's playing, and there's a consistency to this. You see this lawsuit. You see the issue with how he handled the brawl downtown, which I got him coming up in just a bit talking about that. You saw how he did that. He wrote out his statement. He wrote out his statement after the white individuals were arrested. Before the first black person was arrested, he made sure he put the statement out saying, hey, these people were arrested and, they came to our city from somewhere else and they were causing trouble. He made sure he put the focus on them because they were white. But all the black folks that were in the wrong, he's not gonna say a word about them. Y'all know this. It's gonna be more arrests. More arrests should be coming. When those arrests come, watch how he doesn't talk about it. That's all by design. That's how he handles things. And go ahead.
With Mayor Reed, it's consistent politicking, and it's race baiting. How can this individual say this about the black vote? Then in politics, in your capacities as mayor, you act as if you're pro-black. And by pro-black, I mean, he showed up about 5 minutes late to a forum a week or two ago, and this was in the evening. They held a press conference at 1 p.m. that afternoon. But according to the mayor, he was busy working out the investigations, and he was just so bogged down. He was helping the police department. They were sorting it out, and it was a whole day. Now, you didn't release a statement until someone told you this fight went viral. And when it went viral, there was an outpouring of black support. So here comes Mayor Reed on his white stallion, the great black hope. Oh, we're going to stand together as a community. We're going to get past this. My police force, they acted swiftly. Those that are responsible will be accountable and held and brought to justice. Now, keep in mind, the individuals who brought charges were family members. It was actually, the first one was the mother of the white 16-year-old that was punched in the stomach. She brought charges against the guy that punched her son in the stomach. Then the other charges were other loved ones up against the other individuals. The mayor of Montgomery, the police department, hasn't brought charges against anyone yet. The night of the incident, they detained individuals and then they released everybody. So in my eyes, the police department released everybody. Everybody good, get out of here.
Yep.
So it didn't hit the fan in Montgomery until it went viral. And then someone told the mayor. So now, oh man, it's Looney Tune adventures. Now we got to get to work. We got to do something. Now, this is not a referendum on the police department because Mayor Reed said in one of the forums, the buck stops with me. I run the police department. The police chief answers to me. So by those standards, Mayor Reed, I agree. Everything pertaining to crime, I'm going to lay at your feet.
That's right.
Everything going on with our police department, whether it's corrupt or not, I'm going to lay at your feet.
Absolutely.
There are
Absolutely.
over 15 MPD police officers trying to transfer over to county or state law enforcement, or just simply somewhere else. So to say that there's an active outpouring of support from the mayor's office to the local police department, how's that the case when you have at least 15 current police officers at the local police department wanting to get out of there? They already have a shortage of hundreds of police officers. They're not paid adequately. They're not well trained enough to deal with the problems plaguing the neighborhoods of Montgomery. There's no real cooperation with the local police department and state and other law enforcement agencies. There's a real problem there. It was talked about lightly, but it should have been brought to the forefront in a lot of these forums and throughout this campaign for mayor. Incentives to support the local police department. Another thing that was brought up was the Citizen Review Board, right? He supports that, right? Okay, you've been in office for 4 years. You're just bringing this up election year? And the Citizen Review Board is not independent from the city or the mayor. The city council and the mayor appoints the individuals, if the mayor got his way. Those two, the mayor and the city council, would appoint individuals to the Citizen Review Board. And we're expecting them to self-police themselves. If it was a real Citizen Review Board, okay, I would definitely consider that an independent agency made up of the people, connected to the local police department, helping them be the best police force possible, equipped with police and community policing, with the best technology available. 100% I support that. But that is not the proposal that was being pushed. But because it's election year, let's bring out the political tricks. And here's another dancing pony. Oh, yes, I support the Citizen Review Board.
There's that. Yeah, absolutely. Now I want to bring in this. We were just talking about how he mishandled this right here. Let me make this bigger. Now, Mayor Reed went to MSNBC and had this interview.
Joining me now is the mayor of Montgomery, Mayor Stephen Reed. Mayor Reed, thank you very much for coming back to the Saturday show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Mayor, what were your thoughts when you first saw that video?
I think when I first saw the video, I was as surprised as everyone, certainly disturbed by it, and disappointed by the actions that those who were in the wrong place and doing the wrong thing took to someone who was just doing his job and trying to get them to move out of the way for the safety and security of the patrons who own the river.
Hold on a second. Do y'all see this? I want everybody to look right here. Mayor Stephen Reed. What's that letter right there beside his name? That's a D.
It's a D.
What does that D mean? Does that mean Republican?
Nope.
Does that mean independent?
Nope.
I think that means Democrat.
It may mean diabolical Democrat.
They should have had double D right there. All right, let's keep going.
At least 5 people have been charged in the brawl. Are you confident that justice is being served?
Oh, I'm very confident. I think our police chief and our police department have done a great job. The community has been very, very supportive. Those who are on the boat, those who live here, those who are able to provide video and eyewitness accounts, all of them have been very helpful. And I think our approach to this has been methodical. It's been very intense, and it's been something where we have left no stone unturned to get to the bottom of this situation.
I want to point something out. He said, thank you to all the people who had footage and turned their footage in to MPD, law enforcement. And he's he's making sure he's thanking all the people. And he mentioned specifically the people on the riverboat. Notice how he's not saying anything about, hey, all those individuals that had your phones out, how come you didn't want to come in and maybe help to calm things down? He doesn't mention that at all because that's not something that he's even thinking about. He doesn't care about that. He wants there to be some kind of issue like this. And then number two, why would you point out and give accolades to the people on the riverboat when about a dozen of them at least exited the boat after everything was calmed down and they reignited the flame? But notice how he does not talk in that way. He's only looking at it from the people on the riverboat were innocent victims. The co-captain was an innocent victim. He had nothing to do with anything, as if he was just completely calm and did everything professionally. And then everybody that's up on this walkway that's filming, all of them are just they're just doing their jobs and have their phones out. And the white people on their private boat, they're all the bad guys. They it's like almost like they just pulled their boat up to the dock and said, "Hey, where's a black person at? I want to fight a black person right now." That's how this happened when it's not anything close to that. But anyway, let me keep going.
One thing I will say.
Outline the history of your city for viewers who might not know sort of the centrality of Montgomery to the history of Alabama and to the history of the United States. So I'm just wondering, how has this event in your city with that history affected race relations there?
I think race relations here are always a work in progress. I think like much of the nation, we deal with the discord that has been in our political environment, certainly in recent weeks and months and years. That's not helping the situation at all. But I think in this situation, a lot of people saw what happened. They were uncomfortable by it. They were uncomfortable by the racial perception of it. I was uncomfortable by the same thing. And certainly as a black man here, as the first black mayor of the city of Montgomery, you wonder whether or not this is a step back. I think for us, the outrage and the emotional feelings that we had toward what we saw is something that we channel to make sure that now that we're in positions like mayor and police chief, we can do the right thing. And I think from the community standpoint, it'll be up to us to make sure that people realize those who were arrested and committing the assault on the gentleman who was doing his job are not from Montgomery. I don't think it's emblematic of the city, but I do think it speaks to a level of discord that's in the environments, in the atmosphere, still around race, not just in Alabama, but again, throughout this country. And there's a lot of work for us to be done, a lot of work for us to do, and a lot more things to be done, whether it be at the grassroots level, at the political level, at the corporate level, throughout, to make sure we're having the conversations and we're not taking steps backward, like you just mentioned, that those who marched across the bridge in Selma to Montgomery and those who led the Montgomery bus boycott really paved the way for us to be here. So we don't want to step back. We don't want to see that regression. We want to make sure that there is a multicultural coalition coming together to push back at the dog whistles, at the bullhorns, and at the outright actions that we see each and every day in this country, because it doesn't take much for us to lose the progress that has been made over decades in this country.
I want to start with this.
75 million views.
Did we take a step back when Mayor Reed said he didn't need the black vote? And to talk a little bit more in detail about what he is not going to discuss is a lot of people are upset with the fact that he's not talking about particular things of that incident. He's very political, he's race pimping, and he's only talking about a specific situation that fits him. We're going to come together as a community. We've got a multicultural coalition. Montgomery is an amazing place. You know, that all sounds good, but even some of your supporters are upset, Mayor Reed, how your police department handled the incident. They released everybody. So according to them, everything's okay. There was no incident. According to them, the crowd actually had to make the police department arrest. They were going to let them go. So that needs to be addressed as well. And how some of the individuals were placed on the ground when they were detained as opposed to thrown on the ground and other tactics used. There was one law enforcement official walking through the crowd macing people. So all of that is being discussed right underneath him saying, we're going to bring these bad people to justice. My police department, they acted swiftly. Let's break down what took place before the fight actually happened. It was a Saturday in Montgomery. There were events taking place. There were security there, but there were also law enforcement already there. Now, this should go directly to the fact that we need more law enforcement. We need more community policing, and we need more mechanisms in place to ensure that the people are safe when incidents like this happen. Thank God no weapons were used outside of a folding chair and fists. So
and there were, I was told from a very good source, there were 2 firearms recovered from individuals there.
Individuals were drinking and they were operating boats. Children were involved in this fight, being attacked. There were women involved. There was a folded chair used like this was WWE. But law enforcement, if you watch, they were very reactive. They were not proactive. They were not using preventative tactics to separate the groups. When they were notified that there was an issue at that dock, I guess according to Mayor Reed, they acted swiftly. Because there was a lot of time in between before these individuals who owned those boats came down and interacted with that dock worker. I was expecting law enforcement or security or somebody to show up or something. So I said that to say when you have a breakdown in law, when you have a breakdown in society, when that thin blue line or effective governance is not there, all you have is human beings acting out the laws of nature. And that's going to be violent. That's going to bring prejudice and hatred and anger and hatred and all this stress I've had riding this riverboat with these other individuals that I may or may not like. It's going to come out in the form of it's hell in the cell match, and I'm the Undertaker, and I'm just going to try to plow through you. So you're going to have those tribal mindsets come to the forefront because guess what? There must be law and order in the middle of chaos. Whether you're going to produce it as a governance or the people are going to have to bring jungle justice, it's going to be some type of fist-to-fist, bare-knuckle justice. So, again, all of that's not being discussed. What's being discussed is Mayor Reed is acting on behalf of the black community, and he's doing it right.
Yeah, poor old, Montgomery, Alabama, man. They talk like as if this was something that we see pretty regularly down here. And this was the one time that, allegedly the black people won the fight. But the way it's being portrayed to everybody else is as if it's just the normal thing down here. Racism is just commonplace. Like Reed said in that interview, he was making it seem like Yeah, we got a long way to go. Race relations are, always, you know, always something to improve down here in Montgomery. It's like, sir, you're the one who pushes the racial component to the forefront. If you as mayor were more of a mayor for everybody in Montgomery, let's not act like there's no Asians here. They have a lot to do with our economy. Hyundai. Let's not forget about the Hispanics that we have. Albeit, I know plenty of them are not here legally, but they have a big impact on the economy as well. They're not the ones that are out here committing the crimes in Montgomery, nor are the Indians that are here, nor are the other Asians that are here. They're not the biggest issues when it comes to crime. There are people who are working, who own businesses. They're impacting the economy, and it's like, are you respecting their presence in the city, or are you just worried about every time there's an issue, a racial issue, I'm just going to use that to my advantage because as a black man, that comes first and foremost. So I know I'm going to touch the heartstrings of these black people. And rather than, what can I do as mayor that would benefit the black community the most? Like North Montgomery. Montgomery it looks like a hellhole over there.
Well, I'll tell you first and foremost, the people of Montgomery aren't worried about more riverboat fights. What they're worried about is clean water. They're worried about clean water in North Montgomery, South Montgomery, East and West Montgomery. I challenge the people of Montgomery to do one simple task. Go to your tap water, fill up a half a cup. It could be a clear cup, but a container that you can see in. Fill up half the container and then put it at the top of your closet. Wait about 3 days. And then look in that container of water that you filled in 3 days prior and see what you got. And it's not going to be nice, the things that you're going to see floating around in your tap water. So that's a real problem in the people of Montgomery, the tap water.
All right, hold on a second. Can you hear me?
Hey, I'm here.
Hey, it blanked out for a minute, so you gotta start back over, man. You said get a cup, fill it halfway with water, and then go from there.
And put it at the top of your closet, and just simply let it sit for about 3 days.
Oh man, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what's going on. I think there is some kind of setup going on right now because I don't think the internet wants him to tell us what to do with that water. Hold on a second. All right, you back?
Hey, yeah, in the state of Alabama, broadband is not that well. That's another issue that we're more worried about than a riverboat fight.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, all right. So you're talking about the water, and you're saying yes. Get a cup of water, fill it halfway, and then set it out for 3 days?
Sit it at the top of your closet for 3 days. And in 3 days' time, 3 days and 3 nights, on the 4th day, look in and tell me what you see floating around in it. Would you drink that?
Wow.
There's a real issue there. North, south, east, west, Montgomery.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there's a real issue in West Montgomery. There was a Walgreens that closed on West Fairview. A lot of individuals in West Montgomery were using that Walgreens to get their medications. A lot of individuals were using it for groceries. But that Walgreens was a pillar in that community. It's gone. So again, food deserts in West, North, and South Montgomery. There's a lot of people wanting to stay in Montgomery, but quite frankly, rent's too damn high. So where are the new housing apartment locations in North, South, and West Montgomery. Whatever happened to building up the Southwest Montgomery corridor coming into the city along Interstate 65?
Yeah.
That was talked about heavily in the last campaign 4 years ago. I mean, there are real issues that we're worried about. St. Jude, the city of St. Jude, has senior apartments. The Archdiocese notified them, you guys got to pack your bags and go. I think now they have somehow put together a patchwork plan where most of the seniors are at some type of off-location apartments. But again, do they have enough adequate housing? Do they have enough security? Because a senior citizen population requires a certain level of security and privacy for their protection. These are issues that were not discussed during this race for mayor. There are other issues pertaining to, again, homegrown Montgomery businesses. Alabama created opportunity zones years ago when President Trump was in office. Most of Montgomery City is within an opportunity zone. That means it can qualify for big investment dollars.
Yep.
Why aren't we maximizing that? I know the mayor constantly is somewhere in between here, Washington, D.C., and New York City. But is that really profiting us as residents of Montgomery? These are the issues that we're concerned with pertaining to Montgomery as opposed to that riverboat fight.
That's right. That's so right. It's almost like the play is I know there's, as mayor, I know there's all of these issues going on in my city. We have certain funding that we received, right, from federal dollars. And there's so many areas to put the money in. Like you talked about, the south side of Montgomery, I-65 coming into the city. It looks like a desert over there. You come in, first of all, you feel unsafe. You know what I mean? If I'm coming from out of town and I'm getting off on 65 at the boulevard, I mean, you're going to be looking over your shoulder. It doesn't matter if you're daytime, nighttime, doesn't matter. So, like, where's the funding to help that corridor, like you said, doing things to make that a more presentable area? North side as well. Talked about the water issue, which they were in my neighborhood. Waterworks was in my neighborhood yesterday because we're having that water issue, and people were some homes. They were having water tasting like, they said, dirt. So they were flushing the water system. So they did it all day yesterday. So that's a real thing. Like, he's talking about something that's a real thing that's going on in Montgomery, in all parts of Montgomery.
And you know,
But your Mayor Reed, instead of taking care of all those things that will better our city, he's always going to go to MSNBC, go to CNN, go to Al Sharpton, and do an interview about whether it be COVID that didn't even impact our children like that. Like, children were not dying. We had more children get murdered in 2020 than died of COVID in Montgomery. But yet, what did he go talk about on the news at CNN and MSNBC? He talked about COVID. We had a record year in homicides, 2021. Did he go to CNN, MSNBC, and discuss that and say, hey, we have an emergency going on. Like, we need to implement some things very quickly to reduce this. Didn't do it.
I don't remember ever hearing Mayor Reed say the words, Montgomery has gangs. I don't ever remember Mayor Reed say Montgomery has hubs of the drug cartel of South America here. that plays into a lot of the crime and problems plaguing our communities. We have to call a thing, whether it's politics or not. If you've got gangs in Montgomery moving around things, causing problems, call it for what it is. Let's get some special agents here that can bust those up. One of the things that were brought up this year was about a curfew, right?
Yep.
They spoke about a curfew. And my thing about a curfew is years ago, almost 10 years ago, when I ran for city council, this was brought up. And one of the points that I had was, listen, our law enforcement is stretched thin. Who's going to enforce the curfew? Law enforcement. In this era of the camera and how stressed out law enforcement is and how demoralized the communities are, do you really want to add that extra tension on the community and law enforcement by having law enforcement enforce a curfew and having them rustling? It's just going to take one incident to see a law enforcement official rustle a child down to the ground because they didn't stop when they told them to. They were breaking curfew.
Yeah.
And a lot of these youth, they're either going to work or they're going to a loved one's home. But quite frankly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if you're not breaking the law, you're a productive citizen. It's none of my business, quite frankly, where you're going. And that's one of the issues that was brought up this election year as a fix. How about we actually fix these problems instead of putting Band-Aids on symptoms? And how about we actually fix these problems instead of bringing up stuff like curfews? Because quite frankly, if a curfew worked, then why New York City isn't doing it? Los Angeles, Chicago, bigger cities, why isn't Birmingham doing it if curfew works? But I get it. You know, they got to do something. Give them a chance. 4 years is a long time to do nothing.
It is.
If you're on the city council, there was a lot of duties and shots and opportunities that you missed. And that goes to the council person. So we all have to come together. If you're a public official, if you're a voter, if you're a stakeholder somehow in Montgomery, Alabama, we got to find some solutions, and we got to go after those instead of these political tricks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when it comes to the mayor race, I know we said it's going to come down to Stephen Reed. It's going to come down to Gilbert. What are those numbers looking like realistically to you? Do we see a runoff coming, or do you think one or the other wins it outright on the 22nd?
I hope we go to a runoff, but let's play this runoff out. If it is a runoff, who's the most likely candidates to go to that runoff? It will be Stephen Reed and Barrett Gilbert. That is a very easy argument for Stephen Reed to make. Listen, I'm the black guy. He's the white guy. I'm the Democratic vote. He's the Republican vote. I'm rich. He's wealthy. You know, I support Joe Biden. We ain't going to talk about that. But he supports Trump. I'm for you. He moved to Florida. So that's a very easy argument for Stephen Reed to make. And quite frankly, the people of Montgomery are going to vote for Stephen Reed if it's a match such as. Now, if another individual, Felder or McNeil, made it to that runoff against Stephen Reed, it will be a harder sell why you should vote for Stephen Reed as opposed to the other two candidates. And that's why I want people to get educated and figure out what direction you want the city to go in and vote that. Don't worry about what the trends are saying. Don't worry about what the polls are saying. It's two front runners, Stephen Reed and Barrett Gilbert. Think about your values. Think about who you believe has your best interest at heart and vote for that individual, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that's going to save us pulling together under one banner, one America, and I would hope under God we trust, and we move forward with that same idea. But in this particular election, my vote is going to go for Marcus McNeil. I believe he has given me enough information on his platform, on his Main Street economics. I'm going to vote for him. I strongly urge people to consider him for mayor of Montgomery. Now, I know there are other individuals who have made up their mind for Felder. I greatly admire the man. You know, he has a great step-by-step process of how he wants to tackle crime. And I like the fact that he wants to be aggressive when it comes to crime. I like that. But I also understand that people support Stephen Reed and Barrett Gilbreth. But please consider the fact that there are things going on in this city that those two candidates have not discussed, because they themselves are in a box. There are things that Stephen Reed cannot talk about. There are things that Barrett Gilbreth cannot talk about. That's the problem for me. We need to talk about all these problems plaguing our communities, every community across the board, and we need to get some real solutions for the people of Montgomery. Now, going to a runoff, I believe Stephen Reed would win ultimately. That would be an easier sell for him if it's a two-person race. Now, I truly believe those polls, you don't believe every poll, but they're fairly accurate. Most folks have made up their mind. But again, the votes haven't been cast until Election Day. Please consider the other candidates and figure out what direction you want the city to go in.
Absolutely. I will say that I have been pretty conflicted on who I'm going to vote for the last. I've been really considering it the last month. You know, to me, Marcus McNeil. I know Marcus McNeil personally. We actually grew up in the same neighborhood, and you know, got love for him. I don't see him as being a good candidate for mayor. You know, I did interview him back in like June, and you know, it was some things I asked him, and I just really didn't. I didn't feel the conviction. I didn't feel the strength in his answers, and you know, so that's him. But like I said, I got love for him because the man has been steadfast, because he did run in 2019 as well. And I think he's running for another office or something, like city council or something before too. But so, you know, much love for him. And then when it comes to, of course, Stephen Reed, I'm not voting for Stephen Reed, period. So then it becomes to me, Gilbreth and Felder. And I'm leaning at first, when I saw the hype come around Gilbreth, my eyes went to him. I'm like, okay, why is everybody just automatically looking at him as the guy who's going to go against Stephen Reed and defeat him? Like, what is it about him? So I started looking, you know, watching interviews that he was doing and listening to him speak. And I'm like, he doesn't speak like a man who's the complete opposite of a Stephen Reed. I heard a guy that was very much a fence rider on issues and just seemed to be lukewarm when it comes to taking a stance. Either way. And so I don't know, I kind of got a little bit, I'm like, why is there so much hype? But then I found out about the resources. I found out about, you know, the wealth that he's accumulated and the connections that he has. So I'm like, okay, I see why he's being pushed out there. I mean, he does have signs everywhere. I see more signs on street corners and going down highways for Gilbreth than I do for Stephen Reed. But so, and then I welcomed Gilbreth. I sent an invitation. Come on here. Let's do an interview. You know, spoke to the man twice. Spoke to his campaign manager one time. He actually came to my front door, and I'm like, "Hey, funny you're here. I'm trying to get your man on my show to do an interview." He's like, "Okay." So has that happened? No, it has not happened. and Tuesday is like, 3 days away. So that tells me, on my end, I mean, obviously I wasn't a priority, but so then it becomes look at Felder. I'm like, okay, Felder is a guy who he's very much a hardline guy. There's not many questions in where he stands on a particular topic. Now I did interview him, and he gave very direct answers. Like we talked about it earlier with the crime. He talked about economics as well, and he said, "Look, yeah, I have the crime background because I'm law enforcement, been there for 15 years, but also when it comes to the economic side, I've got plans for economics as well, and I have, people on my team that are business people. So people oftentimes they want a mayor to just be this jack of all trades, great at everything. That's not most people. Most people are not great at many things. Most people have specific skills that help them in a certain field. So if people want a person who's supposed to be great at crime, great at reducing crime and preventing crime, and then great at building up small businesses, and then great at bringing bigger industry, and then great at talking to people and being a people person. And like most people are not that type of individual. So with that being said, Felder is a guy who I look at and I say, well, he's hardline on crime. He's hardline on the economy. He understands that, he's not the best person as far as face value, because people not going to know him when they see him, or they see his name, they're not really going to know him. But there's not a lot of swaying on where he stands on things. To me, that means a whole lot. So I'm looking at him and I'm like, that's the guy that I'm going to vote for, because at the end of the day, to me as a voter, I just respect the person who's gonna be a guy who's like, I'm not worried about the noise. The noise doesn't bother me. I know what I need to do for the people of Montgomery, and I know what the people of Montgomery are telling me that needs to be done. So I'm listening to that, and I'm going in that direction. So, that's where I stand with it.
This conversation that we just had should be a lesson for local politics, where you have two grown men that can voice their opinion, different candidates, and we talked about all four, and we can agree to disagree and still be very respectful. But most importantly, we articulated why we supported our candidates. Most of the time, when you talk to a Gilbreth supporter or a Stephen Reed supporter, the Gilbreth supporters are anti-Reed. That's it. The Stephen Reed supporters are anti-everyone else. But tell me one thing Stephen Reed has done in the past 4 years that bettered the city, bettered our lives. They're very hard pressed with that. But this is a lesson in local politics that, quite frankly, we should have been past. And it's 2023. We should have passed this point decades ago when it comes to local politics, because Tennessee and Georgia have figured out, listen, we're southern states, but I don't need to like you to make money and progress with you. We can still make money and progress together. We don't even have to live in the same neighborhood or even like one another. But in the state of Alabama and these cities throughout this state, we still have a hard time not checking off all the boxes. And if you don't check off enough boxes, then you know what? I'm through with you. I don't want to do this with you. And that's the problem.
That's right. That is so right. Man, I think that we covered everything, man. I think that the voters have, like you said, I think a lot of people have made up their minds. I think that hopefully the people that do see this beforehand, that they take in some account of what we're saying. But it's gonna be interesting to see on Tuesday what those numbers look like. I'm going to be very interested in seeing it, and I wish I could have like the live show to discuss it like live, but I'll be at work, so that won't be a possibility. But I can't wait to see how this goes.
You know, at the end of the day, we got to decide what direction we want to go in. We as individuals and we together. And that starts with information, learning what your moral compass is, and vote that. Never chase a person. I don't care if it's a Donald Trump or a Barack Obama, a Stephen Reed, or a Earth. Always follow true north and go with your principles over people. And I think a lot of people get tripped up into personalities and people following them when it comes to politics, and they are constantly let down, or the wool is pulled over their heads when it comes to corruption across the board in both parties, local, state, and federal. But we as a people should be able to come together and figure out we're the solution if we are a well-educated electorate. There's very little that can be pulled off as far as trickery, political trickery in front of us if we are a well-educated electorate. Now, what does that mean? It starts with knowing where your polling location is. It starts with ensuring that your voter registration information is updated. And whatever rule, whatever law you need to follow, follow it. Even on election day, just know that your vote can still be counted. You can still cast a vote. But if you're not in the right polling location, they will tell you where you need to go. But also, if you just are insisting that you want to vote at that particular polling location for whatever reason, you can always vote provisional ballot. You've got until Friday of that week to prove at the local courthouse who you are in order for your provisional ballot to be counted, because you have redeemed that vote now. You have proved who you are. For whatever reason, you were at the wrong location, but you were there on election day. You voted. You're here to validate your identity. Boom, that's counted. Also, if you have a problem, if you will, can you pull up those numbers again? If you have a problem, reach out to the local board of registrar, reach out to the local election center. And again, a lot of this information can be found out at your local election center's website, but also alabamavotes.gov. The state of Alabama has resources for you to pull down. The city of Montgomery, you can go to montgomeryvotesal.gov. So just understand your voice must be heard as the people. And in order for us to better ourselves and our world around us, we must make our voice heard. It's always easy to complain. It was very easy to burn down cities in 2020. It was very easy to fight at the riverfront. The hard part is when we live, and even harder is when we live together. And more hard, or the hardest burden we have as human beings is to ensure that while we work together, we're handing that next generation a better future, a better tomorrow. So those are the principles that help guide me when I cast my vote. Now, my vote ain't necessarily going to be the same as your vote or any other individual's, but no vote is thrown away. All of our voices matter. And if there's a consensus, that is the direction that society ought to go.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thank you for joining me, man. That was a great show. Great information. Yeah, man. You did. I think having you on here was just good because you have the insight of being a part of a party and knowing the background that many other people don't know about. They don't hear about it. They don't see it, and it's like they're blind to it. Out of sight, out of mind. And you give a little bit of insight into that, man. So I appreciate you being here, 100%.
Hey, no problem, man. Thank you for inviting me on. It's always good to talk about how we can better Montgomery and Alabama as a whole. We got a lot of work to do. And next year is a huge year. You know, we got to hunker down and figure out what we're going to do as a nation and as a state next year. But first and foremost, charity begins at home. Let's make sure Montgomery is well off with the election this coming Tuesday. Vote.
That's right. Thank you, sir. Man, I'll be talking to you soon, man.
Hey, no problem. I'll be waiting for it.
All right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was my special co-host, Cedric Coley, member of the Montgomery County Republican Party, with some great information to share with us. Let's see. I want to go through a couple of comments. I missed a couple earlier. I'm going to go back through those. Let's see. Adrian says, I feel we need to have a master class on politics for people who are not aware and people who are not involved. Welcome to the Captain's Quarters show. That's what part of what I try to do with people is try to give them a little bit more information than they may have otherwise. I mean, a lot of people, they don't really, people working jobs, they got families, they got a lot going on. So they're not really doing a lot of research on really what's going on politically, what's in the news, something that they may need to know about that may help them down the road, right? Make a decision. So I try to just talk about these issues and bring things to light that may otherwise get ignored. And I have great people around me, man, like Cedric Coley, and I have others that they have expertise. You could say expertise in other areas that I don't have that in, and they can enlighten me as well, and all of you. So that's what I'm here for, man. I just want to be a person who just shines a light in other areas that don't get the light shine on. Let's see here. I had a comment from Bonsai Bill earlier. I think we were talking about the whole brawl downtown in Montgomery, and so as in relation to that, he was saying, as a white security officer, having worked spring break clubs, bars, etc., having worked hand in hand with both Black and Hispanic fellow security officers, I would have been obligated as a matter of duty to back up that security officer. So he's talking about the co-captain of the Harriet II riverboat. But rest assured, had I tried to help him, somebody with a tribal mentality would have tried to take me out with those white imbeciles. Same in Chicago and many other cities. It is just another part of the globalist elites and their political pawns planned genocide. If we the people do it for them, that is one to kill later. One to kill later. So appreciate the comments. Then that whole riverboat thing was just, it was a terrible thing. But what's interesting about it is that was not the first brawl that we've seen downtown Montgomery. Like, I remember several years back, right, individuals that I know personally that were involved in a brawl downtown. Okay, spilled off into it went from a restaurant, a outside seating area at a restaurant, spilled over into one of the main streets downtown, and continued. There was a melee. I mean, people running all over, fighting multiple people, and those individuals were not white. Okay, and that situation made the news. They talked about it, and it there was a negative connotation associated with it, right? Because this is downtown Montgomery, and it's the first big brawl since Montgomery's downtown area had really come back. Like, Montgomery downtown was not always what it is now. Under Bobby Bright, that got started back in 2004. But so that fight happened a few years back. And because there wasn't a racial component to it, everybody was pretty much black involved. So it wasn't this racial thing. It was just, man, we need to make sure we have things in place to keep this from happening again. Right? That's how the city looked at it. They didn't look at it as something, to push politically, right? I think the only thing that came from that was there was a law where they allowed you to have alcohol downtown. So you could walk down the street with the alcohol. They stopped that. Okay, after that fight happened, they discontinued that law, and it affected businesses that had built their business around the whole idea of open containers downtown. So, it's weird when it comes to politics. They will just use whatever they can use in the moment, right? And they'll talk about the riverboat thing like it's the worst thing ever. Nobody was shot. Nobody was killed. Granted, people were injured, okay? But Montgomery has had this year alone already 50 plus homicides. 50 plus homicides. 5-6 years ago, Montgomery was averaging like 40 for the whole year. 40 and less. Now we're 50 plus already. The last 4 years, we've been averaging over 60 homicides a year. So instead of focusing on that and talking about that, they don't do that, because guess what? Politically, that's not a good look for Mayor Reed. That's not a good look for any person that's in government in the city of Montgomery. So they're not going to talk about that at the forefront, but they will pick one incident where no one died and say, this is a terrible incident, and just use it to their advantage. That's politics, people. And when people say, they don't want to be involved in politics or whatever, you're involved in politics every day. Do you go to work? Best believe your job is involved in politics. There's politics going on within your job, within who gets promoted, who gets demoted, who gets fired, who gets hired. All of that is politics. Okay, politics are nothing but the use of information to get certain things done. That's it. Like, politics are not confined to government. Politics happen on sports teams, in your workplace, at schools, all kind of things. So you're involved in politics every single day you wake up. I mean, sorry to tell you. Okay, so people want to be anti-political, but you can't help but be involved. If you wake up and you go to school, go to work, you're involved. And not to mention the companies that you work for, guess who they are lobbying to get certain laws passed, right? So they're in the politics too. They're giving money to certain candidates to say, hey, push this law right here in this city right here, because we're invested in that city and we need this law passed. That happens every day. Walmarts, Targets, Dollar Generals, Family Dollars, your restaurant chains, all these people are involved. So it's just, if you work for any of them, I mean, Amazon, they have a huge, these big companies like Amazon, Google, all right, they have huge stakes in politics. Who do you think keeps certain people kind of shadow banned and not pushed out there a lot, right? When it comes to YouTube, like, if you get to a certain point and you're saying a certain thing that Google doesn't agree with, which Google owns YouTube, then guess what? They'll push that down, right? Through the algorithm or whatever. That's what happens. It's politics. That is politics. So, man. Let me see here. Run through, make sure I didn't miss any comments. I did not. So I'll leave y'all with this, man. Make sure y'all go out and vote if you're in Montgomery, Alabama. August 22nd, go and vote. But vote for the person, like Cedric was saying. Vote for the person that you did your research on and you trust to lead the city. Don't go out there and vote for a person because you know them, or they're a person that's just really popular and you just think that's just the best person because they're popular, or because they're a certain skin color, because they're white, because they're black. Because they have 3 kids and whoever has the most kids is going to be the mayor. Something stupid like that. Like, don't do that. Make sure you do your research, read up on their platforms, and decide for yourself who you want to vote for to lead this city. That's how it should be. Period. Nobody dictates to me who I vote for. Okay? Don't let anyone dictate to you who you vote for. Now, I will tell you all day long, don't vote for Mayor Reed. Right? Because I just, I can do that, right? I'm on my platform. I can say that, right? But that's just, again, that's my opinion. That doesn't mean you have to go out there and not vote for the man. I'm just saying, based on, we just ran through a whole show explaining why not to vote for the man. So if you can find a little bit of daylight, right, and reason to vote for him, then hey, man, I guess we'll have 4 more years of 70, 80 homicides a year. I guess we'll see North Montgomery continue to stay dead, and South Montgomery continue to die, and West Montgomery continue to not be built up. Like, I guess we'll just continue this, right? And East Montgomery will continue to look more like the rest of Montgomery. I guess that's what we're going to head to, right? Our children with less safe neighborhoods, less safe schools. I guess that's what you want if you vote for Reed. But it's my opinion. Thank y'all for watching the show. I appreciate it. This was the Captain's Quarters Show. I was your host, L. Milliner, the captain. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gone.